Welcome guys once again, and in the last video we basically created our auth controller that was going to handle our login and our registration. And for this video we are going to be creating our contact controller, which is going to handle basically the create operation of our contacts, the read operation of our contacts, the update operation of our contacts, delete operation of our contacts, as well as for the search, for the pagination, and for fetching single data. All the endpoints are going to be written inside of our contact controller. So without any much talking, as you can see, I have my terminal already popped up here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use Artisan to start scaffolding a couple of things. So the first thing we want to scaffold is our controller, and for our controller it's going to be inside the user folder, and this is going to be called contact controller. And yep, our contact controller has been created for us successfully. And the next thing we want to do is to create our migration. So we're going to say PHP Artisan make the migration would be create contacts table. Right? Yes. And now if we just do create contacts table, you see we have our contacts table already. So for our contacts table, what we want to do now is to be able to set our table parameters. But before we do that, let's also just create our model here. So we are going to say PHP Artisan make model, our contact model. So our model is going to be contacts, and our model has also been scaffolded for us. Now back to our contacts table, what we want to do is to set the fields for our table. So I'm going to just close this terminal, and now in setting our fields, we're going to set a couple of fields here, and this is going, second field is going to be an integer, and this is going to be the user ID. The reason why we'll be providing the user ID is it will help us query contacts specific to individual users. And then the next would be the username. So, and this would be a string, and this would actually be not username per se, but let's say call this first name. And we also need to pick the last name, and the last name can be nullable because in a contact the only thing that are compulsory is only the number and the first name for this application. So the last name can be nullable. And then we have the email. The email too can be nullable. Sorry, the email too can be nullable. And then we have the phone number, and phone number should be a string, not an integer, because we could have a plus sign at the front of it. Okay, so we have a phone number, and then the last is we have an image file, basically the image the user can upload, and this too can be nullable. Okay guys, so now we have done this. So we're going to migrate this table, and to do that we just say PHP Artisan migrate, and yep, our table has been created for us. And now if I come here, you can see our, let me just click here, and you can see, no, sorry, not you, it's supposed to be this one, right? Yes. So now here we have our contacts table, and our migrations is clearly telling us that our contacts table has been created. Alright, so having successfully created our contacts table, what we can do now is simply go to our model, which is contacts.php, and we want to set the table. Now if I left this way, because contacts is the name of our table and this is contact, it will suit perfectly, but I like to set the name of the table sometimes. Sorry, I like to kind of like say map models to specific tables sometimes. So that's exactly what we're going to be doing here, and we're going to call this contacts. Alright, so for now that we have done this, we can now head straight into contact controller and start writing our functions. But before we do that, we are going to be importing a couple of things here. the first we would need to import is going to be our contacts model, of course. So not console, contacts. And we are also going to need to import Laravel's validator to help us validate. Yep, not you. And the last one we are going to import would be URL generator. So if URL generator. Alright. So sorry guys, I couldn't find it, so I'll just go illuminate and /routing /URL generator. Yep, so here it is. Okay guys, so now that this has been done, we are going to declare two variables here. The first is going to be to handle basically our model. So we're going to call this protected contacts, not protect. This will be protected contacts. And the next is going to handle our base URL. And we'll need this base URL when we are trying to send the path of the image. Okay, so now, and with that being done, we want to set our constructor. And in our constructor, that is where we are going to set our middleware. And our middleware is going to help us basically to protect all the endpoints in this class. Alright, so our middleware is going to be in our constructor, so that once this class is called, it is activated automatically. And we're going to use the user guard. So once this user has not been authenticated, he has no access to this. And then we also want to basically our contacts variable should be mapped to our contact model. And the last thing we want to do now is in our constructor is our URL generator class. Alright, we would want to create a variable here for it. And we want to use our URL generator to be able to get the base URL of our application. So we can then say this base URL is going to be our URL generator to this. Okay. And now this gives us the absolute path of our URL generator. Alright guys, so now that this is done, we want to head straight into the first endpoint, which is going to be the add contact endpoint, which is basically our create endpoint. So add contact endpoint. And I want to write a comment here. This function /endpoint, right, is to create a new contact specific to a user. So a user. Okay, so now that we have written that comment, we want to pass the request here. And now that we have passed the request here, in our contacts function, we are going to be getting all what is going to be sent from our React application. But basically, there are some certain things that we will be requiring, or basically we will be needing. All right. So whenever the user is sending the data from the application, from the React application down to our API endpoints, there are three data, or basically three parameters or three data that we actually need that must be passed. All right. Apart from the token that will be passed in the header of the application, we will need the token to be passed in the body, so that from that way we can be able to extract the user ID from the token. We'll also need the first name, because the first name is compulsory, or basically it's required to create a new contact. And then we'll need the phone number. All the rest of that things are optional if the user wants to pass them. Okay, so now we are now going to use Laravel's validator, and we want to basically validator make. All right, and like I said, we are going to get all requests sent, but we are going to check for the presence of just three parameters that will be passed. And the first is the token, and this would just be required. The second of them is the first name, and this will be required and must be a string, and the last is going to be the phone number. And for the phone number, it's only going to be required, and of course it should be a string too. And right now, once we have set all that, we can just put our semicolon here, and we can then say that if this validator fails, so basically if it does not meet all the requirements that we have set in our application, so if that fails, we want to return a JSON response to our user, and this JSON response is going to have this success message, of course, set to false. It's also going to have a message. Our message would be the error message from the validator. So validator messages, and we want this to array. Okay guys, so now if validator fails, we want to return this response. And why am I getting an error? Because I put a semicolon here. Alright, so if validator fails, we want to show this error. But if validator does not fail, then the first thing we want to do is to check if the user is uploading a profile picture together with his contact details. Remember, if we go to our contact model, we have an image file here which is going to store the user's profile image. So that is exactly what we are going to be checking for, to see if the user uploaded a profile image. Now, if the user did not upload a profile image, we are simply going to set a default image for the user. But then if the user uploads a profile image, of course, which is a base 64 encoded image string, we are basically now going to check for the MIME type. Okay, so now let's head straight into that. We are now going to get the profile picture, and we're going to get that from the request, and we're going to call this profile image from our the profile image will be the name that will be sent from our React application. Okay, so and we want to declare a variable here called file name, and this variable is going to store the final state of our profile picture, basically the final name of our profile picture. Or okay, so the final say state. Don't worry, you're going to understand what I mean when we are done here. So what I'm going to now say is, if profile picture is not, basically if the user sends no profile picture, we want to provide the user with an image. And before we do that, we want to generate a name. So if profile picture is null, sorry, I'm making a mistake. If profile picture is null, we want to give the user a default image. So we're going to set the property of file name to be equal to default avatar, all right, the PNG. So if you remember the first video I did when I began this application, you're going to see that there were a lot of images that had some default pictures, and then some that had uploaded images. So those ones that had some kind of images that didn't look like, you understand what I mean, right? So those ones were the ones that had the default avatar. All right. So, but if the user actually provides an image which is a base 64 encoded string, we want to generate a name for this user, and we'll use the unique ID, PHP unique ID function, and we want this name to be as unique as possible. So we are going to add the time function to it, and we also want this to be extremely unique. So we're going to add the date, which is the year, the month, and the day, so that we can be able to know exactly when this image was added. And after that, at the end of it, we want to just append, an underscore img. All right, so basically this is just a random name that will be generated for each image. So after we have generated the random name, we are now going to say we're going to declare a variable here and call this base 64 image, because basically this is talking about the base 64 encoded image. And the reason why we'll be doing this is because I don't want to lose the state, or basically this, I don't want to lose this. So I'm just going to get this profile picture and store it inside of here. I don't want to change the value of this profile picture while I'm trying to manipulate, or basically while I'm trying to check for MIME type and all that. I just want to store it in a variable and then keep this initial state of profile picture equal to the request of the profile image that is sent. Okay, so now this will now be assigned to our profile picture, and now we can work with the base 64 image variable. So the first thing we want to do is to get the image. So we are going to say file bin, and file bin will say file get content. So we're going to use file get contents PHP function, and file get contents is one of the coolest functions to work with 64 encoded string images in PHP. So we're going to pass this, and now we want to check for the MIME type. So for the image too, so we're going to say MIME type will be equal to, oh, why am I making that? MIME type will be equal to MIME content type. All right. So to some of you who are saying, well, this is a deprecated function, as far as I know, it was deprecated at some point, but later on it was accepted. So what we are going to pass, the file itself. The file itself is what we're going to pass, because we need the file to be able to check for the MIME type, not the base64 encoded string. So now we are now going to say if the MIME type, if the MIME type, or should we go? No, let's do it this way. If the image has a MIME type of PNG, which is equal to the MIME type, all right, we basically want to store the file name. Basically, this file name variable that we created here will be equal to the randomly generated name. We're going to then append .png to it as the file name. .png to it. Okay, guys. But else if, so basically, let me just copy this. All right, let me just copy this, and now let me paste this, and paste this again. So else if again. So else if this is JPEG, JPEG, we also want to do the same thing too. We're going to attach the JPEG here, JPEG, and else if this is JPG, so we're going to attach JPG here, all right. And the last else, so if it does not meet any of these requirements, let's say the user is trying to upload a video, what we are going to do now is we're going to return a JSON response. So we're going to return a response, and this response is going to be JSON, and the JSON response would have a success of false. All right, guys, success of false, and it would have a message, and the message would be pretty simple and straightforward. It's going to say only PNG, JPG, and JPEG files are accepted. JPG and PNG, comma, JPG and JPEG files are accepted for setting profile pictures. Alright, guys, and we just put a comma here, and this should be 500 error. And let's move up, and this, if validator fails, this should also be a 500 error too. Alright, 500 error. Alright, so having checked for the MIME type of the image, and we are now sure that the image, or basically the MIME type, is correct. The MIME type of the image that the user is sending is correct, and we have also renamed the image. Basically, what we can now do is to get the token. And why is this still showing me like, say, it's not defined? Well, I really don't know why, but maybe as we head on to this video, we might decipher the problem. Okay, so now we have been able to, ascertain for sure and say this, the MIME type of this image is accepted by us. The next thing we can now do is to get the token, basically, because we want to be able to get the ID from the token. So we're going to create a variable here and say user token, and this would be the request and token. Okay, the request and the token. And to get the token, we can now get the user. So we're not going to say auth, and we have users, and we are going to use authenticate. All right, and from here we can now extract the user token, and we can now extract the user details, and from the user details we are now going to declare a variable here called user ID, and this will be user ID. So now, having extracted the user ID, we can now go on to create this new contact. And to create this new contact, we would need the contacts model and the user ID. and the user ID will be assigned to our user ID, and then the phone number, and then the phone number would be assigned, of course, to our phone number. So request phone number. And I wouldn't want to start typing all this, so I'm just going to copy this for the next, which is going to be our first name. So we're going to change this to first name, as well as change this to first name. And the next is going to be our last name. So we're going to change this to last name, as well as this to last name too. And the next is going to be the email. So we're going to change this to email. And then we're also going to change this to email. And the next is going to be the image file. So we're going to change this to image. Okay, request profile, pic profile. I think it's profile. Let me see exactly what. Okay, it's called profile underscore image from our request. And image file. Okay, guys. And now that we have basically done all our mappings to our user ID, to our phone number, to our first name, to our last name, to our email, and to our image file, the next thing we can now do is to basically save this contact. So we're now going to use the save function. And now that we have saved this contact, we want to upload the profile picture. So we're now going to say if profile picture, which is of course the request that is being sent, is null. So basically, if there's no profile picture, then don't bother uploading anything. But else, if it actually there's a profile picture, we're going to use file put content. And for file put content, we are going to place the folder in a place called profile images, in a folder called profile images. And this profile images is going to have profile images file name, which is the name of our file. So that is the file itself, the file part, profile images. And then we're going to pass the base64 string, so file name. So basically we are moving the base64 string to that folder and assigning it that name. Okay, so now once we have done that, we can then return a response, and that response is going to be a JSON response, and of course the response is going to be 200 since it will be signifying successful operation. And we're going to say success here is true, and our message is going to say contact saved successfully. Contact saved successfully. And now once our contact has been saved successfully, what we are going to do now is to create this folder. So we're going to create this folder in our public folder here, and we're going to call this profile images. Okay, so that is that to add a new user. The next function we are going to be looking at is basically going to be reading data. So we've looked at the create user, we're going to look at the read, or basically fetching the contact specific to a particular user. And so we're going to now call this getting contacts specific to a particular user. Alright, and for this, I'm going to call this function get paginated data. And of course, this is going to take a couple of parameters. The first parameter is going to take would be our pagination, basically the number of content we want to be displayed per page. So I'm going to set this to null. And then the second would be the token. So let's just call this the token that will be passed. Okay, so now that this is done, the first thing I want to do, first of all, because we are going to be dealing with images here, is I want to get the basically the path to this profile images folder right here. So we're going to use the base URL function, the base URL variable, which gives us the base URL from our application, and then we can then attach this profile images folder. And now that that is actually done, what we can now do is we want to get the user ID from the token. So we are going to say auth users as is named in our guard, and we're going to use authenticate, and we are going to pass the token. Okay, so now that that is done, the way this function is going to work is this. If the user passes no parameter for pagination, we fetch all the data and send it to our React application. If it passes per page, say let's say he passes like 5 per page here. Let's say he passes like 5 per page here. We're going to be sending 5 for each page. Okay, guys. So what we are going to do before we head on to doing that is we want to get the user ID. So the user ID is going to come from our user ID. All right, so it's going to come from our user ID. And now we will now say if pagination variable, if it's equal to null, so basically if it's empty or it is an empty string, is equal to an empty string. Okay, so if it's equal to null is an empty string, then we will now fetch all the contacts. So we'll now say contacts will now be equal to this contacts, and we want to say where the user ID in our table or in our table meets this user ID for all the contacts in the contacts table. And want to order this by the last added, so we're going to say order by the ID, and this is going to come in descending order. So basically it's going to come from the last, so the last content we added will be the first that will be displayed. And then we want to get this and make this, send this to an array. Alright, so now once we have succeeded in getting our contacts, we want to return a JSON response, a 200 response. And I want to copy this basically and come here and now paste that in here. So we're going to return a JSON response with a 200 response header, and the success of course will be true. We would not pass any message here. What we are just going to pass is going to be the data in the file directory. So for the data, we are going to be passing contacts. Alright guys, contacts. And for the file directory, we are going to be passing the file directory. Okay guys, so if the user actually passed pagination parameters, then we can now say contacts paginated, pass pagination parameters to our endpoint. Can now say contacts paginated, and this would now be this contacts where user ID merges with user ID. So where user ID merges with user ID, order by ID. Want to order this by ID, DSC, and we want to paginate our contacts. Alright, so we want to paginate our contact. Oh boy, never mind. I think I'm not that bad of a singer. What do you think? Please leave your comments below. Let me know. Okay, so paginate, and we want to pass the pagination parameter. So let me do Alt Z, pagination parameter. And sorry, let me zoom this. Why am I always forgetting to do this every time I begin shooting a video? Please, sorry guys, forgive me. I'm always forgetting to zoom this. I think I'll have to set a reminder that will help remind me anytime I want to shoot a video to always zoom. Okay, so now we have basically gotten the contacts and we have passed the pagination parameter. It's now time for us to return the data. So I'm just going to copy this here and paste this, and success true, contacts paginated is what will be passed. Contacts paginated, and we're going to pass the file directory. Okay, so that's that for reading or basically fetching out contacts. So that's that for the R part of the contacts whole, or basically our contacts API. So the next is going to be the U, which is the update. So we're going to say update contact endpoint / function, and this we are going to call public function edit single data. Right, edit single data. And to perform the editing of a single data, we would first of all need to pass a couple of parameters here, and of course we need the request to be passed here, and we can then say validator basically and we'll be validating using Laravel's validator make, and we are going to get all the requests that will be sent to us. But even at that, we would still only check to see if the first name is present, required, and string, and the phone number is present too, before we actually perform an update of this contact. And this is also a string. And now once we have done this, we can then say if this validator fails, we would return a JSON response. So let me not type this, let me just hurry up and copy this from here. So if the validator fails, we want to return a 500 error. So I'm just going to copy this, scroll straight down, and paste this here. So if the validator fails, we want to return the validator error messages. Okay, so once we have done that, I want to also pass one parameter here too, which we will be needing, which will be the ID. The ID of the content will help us better to be able to edit that content. Okay, so what we are now going to do is we're going to find that content. So we're going to say find data, and find data, we're going to use our contacts model to find the ID. So we're going to use our contacts model to find the ID, and we're going to say if this is absent, so if basically that content or the content with an ID of search does not exist, we're going to return a 500 error. And the 500 error is going to say please provide a valid ID. So I'm just going to copy this. I'm tired of writing response JSON, so let's just be doing this. So this is going to return a message of provide a valid ID, or please this content has no valid ID or something. Alright, so once that is done, we want to get the image that we want to check if an image already exists or for that user in our application. So basically we want to check if the user already uploaded an image before now. The reason why I want to check that is basically if the user already uploaded an image before now, we want to check if the image is default avatar. If the image is our default avatar image, basically that means that the user did not upload an image. But if it's not a default avatar image, we would then delete the image from our from the folder, from our public profile images folder. And once we have the image deleted, then we can then go ahead to check if the user provides no image, then we can use our default avatar image. If the user provides an image, then we can then re-upload the new image. So basically what we are going to do is we're going to provide the previous image for the user to be able to download the image and then re-upload the image again if he still wants to use that old image. Okay, so what we're now going to do is we are now going to say get file will be find data and image file, which is what we call the table, the role in our database. And once we have this, we are now going to say if get file, we're going to use the ternary operator here. So if get file is equal to default avatar .png, then do nothing. But if it's not it, then we want you to actually just delete this image from the folder, from our profile images folder. So delete this from our profile images folder for us. Okay, so now that we have successfully deleted the image, we will now do something here which we have already done before while we're trying to add a contact. And let me just come up here and copy all this from here down to here, and I'm going to copy that. I'm going to get down here and paste that in here. So I'll check this back. Okay, so now if that is not the image, if the image uploaded is a default avatar, do nothing. If it's not a default avatar, then delete the image. The next step is we are going to get the profile image, the image that is sent from our server, from our React application. Then we'll declare a variable here called file name. I think I've explained that before when we did the insert in this same video. So profile picture equals no blah 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 blah. So in order to save us some time, I won't be explaining that. Okay, so now once all that is done, we now roll straight down here. So once everything is, everything about the image is perfect, we now want to update this contact. So to update the contact, we are now going to map the rows in the table to our new data. To first name, find data first name will be mapped to request first name, and find data last name or phone number will be mapped to request phone number, and find data image file will be mapped to request profile picture. Not request profile picture, will be mapped to file name, because that's our new name of the file. And last name will be mapped to last name. So find data last name will be mapped to our request last name, and find data email will be mapped to our request email. Okay guys, so now once we have succeeded in updating every single thing, we can then say find data save. So once we are done with updating this, we want to do the same thing we did in our insert here. So basically check if the profile picture is null. If it's not null, then upload the image and then send the JSON response. So I'm going to just paste that in here, and we are going to say contacts updated successfully. Updated successfully. Okay, so now that we have succeeded in doing the update, the next one we're going to be doing now is going to be the deleting of a contact. So basically, anytime a contact is being deleted, we don't just want to delete the row in the DB, but we also want to delete the image that user has, if any exists. And we don't want to delete our default image, because our default image is our default image. Does that make sense? Okay, our default image is not supposed to be deleted because other contacts are also using our default image. So there's a one-to-many relationship between our default image and our contacts. Alright, so now let's just right here say deleting contacts endpoints. So we're going to write the function, say public function delete contact, and this is just going to pass the ID. And the first thing we want to do is we want to be sure that this data exists. So we're going to say find data these contacts find, and we're going to find the ID. And if this does not exist, so if there's no contents with that ID, then we're going to return a response. Yes. Oh boy. Let's just copy this. We're going to return a 500 JSON error response. So let me Ctrl Z that now. And this is going to be 500. And our message is going to say contact with this ID does not exist. Doesn't exist. Okay. So once we are actually sure that this contact actually exists, we now want to delete that. But first, to delete that, we want to get the image file. So we're going to say find data image file, so that we can delete it as well as deleting as we delete the data from the row in the DB. So we're going to say find data delete. So basically, if we succeed in deleting this contact, we also want to delete the file itself. So if get file is equal to default avatar, if it's equal to default avatar.png, what we want to now do is to just check if it's default avatar.png, then do nothing, but else on link. So delete this from profile images folder and our get file. So it's going to delete this file, and once that is deleted, we want to return a 200 response saying contacts deleted successfully. Deleted. So I just actually pasted what I copied before to save me some time. So contacts deleted successfully. So now that we have succeeded in doing the create, the read, the update, and the delete, we are going to need just 2 more endpoints. And the first endpoint is going to be to get single data, basically to get just a single data. And the reason why we are going to be needing this first endpoint is during our when we are about to perform our update. So once the user clicks on edit button, we want to open a new component, and then on that component we are now going to load the contacts. Of course, I know we could actually say maybe pass those components into the variable and then load them. But then what if that was actually we can still do that, but I would personally, because maybe that content could have been deleted, and now we are now trying to use what is already in the state without trying to update the state from our actions, or maybe dispatching maybe from our services down to our actions, down to our reducers to then update the state. Maybe what actually is in the state may be different from what is in the server at that particular point in time. So that's the reason why I personally like to go this way. So what we are now going to do is public function. We're going to call this function get single data. So this will help us to get just a single data. And we're just going to pass the ID. And I'm going to be doing some copying and pasting from here. So basically, if the ID is absent, we're going to tell you this contact with this ID doesn't exist. But if it actually exists, we want to return a JSON response. So I'm going to copy this just to save us time. Success is true. And we are going to return a data. Sorry guys. We're going to return data. And our data would be find data. And the last parameter we're going to return here would be the file directory. So what I'm going to do here now is say file directory would be this base URL and slash profile underscore images. Oh, sorry, profile underscore images. Yep, profile underscore images. So we're passing the file directory to here. File directory. And this is going to be a 200. No, 500. Okay, so now we have succeeded in getting single data, and let's just write here endpoint for getting single data. And now that we have done this endpoint, we are now going to write the last endpoint, and the last endpoint is going to be responsible for our searching of data. Basically, our searching of data as well as paginating our search as well. So we're going to say public function search data, and this function is going to take the search, then it's going to also take our pagination, because we also want to be able to paginate our search content, and then it's also going to take the token so that our search will be unique to a particular user. And so we're going to comment here and say this function is to search for data as well as paginating our data searched. Okay guys, so right in here, the first thing we would need is the file directory. So let me just copy this from here, and then we're going to paste this here so that this can give us the file directory to our all our files. So the next thing we want to do is to get the user ID from the token. So users authenticate, and we're going to pass the token right here. We're going to pass the token. Okay, so we're now going to say user ID will now be equal to the user and then the ID. And now that we've gotten the user ID, we can now say if pagination is null or pagination is empty. So basically, if nothing is passed into pagination, then here we come to perform our non-paginated search query. And here goes our query. We're going to say this contacts, basically accessing our model, and we're going to use the where clause. So the first is we're going to check to see whether this user is actually the user we are talking about. So where user ID matches this user ID. Okay, and we also want to perform another way using Eloquent. We would have to, or basically it's going to be just a little bit complex. So let me explain to you what exactly I actually mean. If this was to be normal SQL and wanted to perform our search query, for this kind of data, it would have been select all from, say, table where, and then we just have a bracket here. And we're going to say where user ID is equal to our user ID, right? And we'll now say where, and maybe we can now say first name like this, last name. So you can now see here that we are now having two different groupings, this and this. So to be able to achieve this using Eloquent in Laravel, we would need to nest a function inside of our where clause. And so to do that, let me just get rid of this. So here we have non-paginated search query. So where user ID is this, and where, and now in here we're going to pass a function, and that function is going to have a value here, which is going to be called whatever we want. So let's just call it query, and let's just break this into a new line so that this looks clean. Okay, so let's just call this query, and we want to use this for, so we'll have to pass the search. So basically this function here would need two parameters. So let's just, and why are we still having some stupid errors? Because this, sorry guys, because it's supposed to be here. Where is the problem coming from, guys? Let me see. Let me remove this whole thing and write it again. So let's say where, let me write this first before I explain, so that I don't make any mistake. Okay, so now the error is gone. So now let me explain this. This particular function takes two parameters. The first is going to be the query, or the query that I want to be appending to this contact where, this particular one here. And then the second one is going to be the data we want to be playing around with, or want to manipulate, or want to perform our actions with. So we're not going to say non-paginated search query will be this contact where user ID is this, and where. But remember, as I showed in the last time, if this was to be interpreted in normal, say MySQL, this would be select normal SQL query. This would be select all from maybe blah 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 blah. Let's just say DDD, and we'll have where. But then the where will have user ID equals user ID, and then if we use an and, of course, if we use or where, yeah, it will be an or. But this second query will also be inside the bracket. Okay. So now what we can now do here is we'll now use this query to attach. So we're not going to say where, we're only going to check for just a handful of them. So the first will be the first name. So where first name is like the search data, so percentage search, and we are also going to check for the first name, the last name, the email, and the phone number. Yes, I think that's all we should check, so that we can make the search a bit more dynamic, last name, or a bit more user friendly per se. So if the guy could only remember the email, he'd be able to perform the search. Or where last name is like last name, right? So sorry, not last name, sorry, search. Why am I making mistakes right now? So let me just copy this. I think this video is really long and I'm getting a bit tired, so maybe that's why I'm making a lot of mistakes. But we have first name, we have last name. The next is going to be the email, and the email like search, and then the next would be after the email, the next would be, so we have the first name, we have the last name, we have the email. And why am I still passing last name again? Just imagine. This should be phone number. This should be phone number. And so where first name is like the search content, or where last name, or where email, or where phone number is like that. So we'll just have to end that here. And outside of this query, we will now say we need this data to be ordered by ID, and this should come in this descending order. I'm gonna get this send to array. Okay, so if the guy provides no pagination, this is what we are going to be returning for the guy, or for our React application, or back to our client side. Okay, so now having done that, we can now return a response, a 200 response here, and our data is going to be our non-paginated search query, and we're also going to pass our file directory. But if the user actually wants a pagination, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this query, so save me the stress of writing it all over again. I'm going to copy this too, and I'm going to paste this here, and I'm going to call this paginated search query, and I'm going to come down here, order by, then we need to paginate this data, and this is, we're now going to pass the pagination parameter, pagination, and we're going to return this response with the paginated search query. All right, so we save that. So guys, now that we have successfully written the search data function, we are now going to add our route. So we're going to go to api.php and set up our route. And what I want to do here is I like to split my screen so that this one takes this and this one takes this. So so what I'm going to do now is let's just head straight here and start setting up our route. And right here, our first function was add contact. So we're going to copy this add contact here, and let's just set up the route first. So this is going to be a post request, and we want to call this contact/add, and this is coming from contact. My God, contact controller, and we want to paste that function here. So we can then move down to the second endpoint, which is get paginated data. And get paginated data is actually a get request. And it's going to be contact/get all slash, of course, our pagination option is optional to say. So we're going to say pagination, which is optional. And or let's pass the first one, which is compulsory first, before we then pass our pagination data, which is a token. So our token is compulsory, and then our pagination is optional. Okay, so we are now going to add the contact controller, and the function is get paginated data. So let me copy this right now, get paginated data. Okay, so we just scroll down to the next function, which is edit single data. And for editing single data, I want this to be a post. All right, so post. Of course, you could actually make this a put request, but I just want all my requests to be either post or get. So for this, we're going to call this contact, and this is update. And for update, we want to pass one parameter here, and the parameter is the ID of the content. And it's not optional to say. So if it were to be optional, we're going to add this question mark here. That's the way you declare optional parameters in Laravel routing. So now let's just call this contact controller, and edit single data is the name. So let's paste that in here. Let's add the semicolon at the end. And the next function after update is delete. Right? Yes, delete. So even delete too, we won't be using the delete, but we're going to be using the post too. So this would be delete, and we'll be passing the ID, which you can see here. It's passed as a parameter, and that is also going to come from contact controller. All right, contact controller, and at the function is delete contacts. And then the last two functions, one of which is to get single data. Right, if I'm correct, the next one is get single data. Yes. So we have route, and this is going to be get, and we want contact / get single, and we're going to pass the ID as the parameter. And here would be contact controller, and we are going to copy this get single data function, and we'll paste that in here. Okay, and the last of them all is search data, which is also a get request. So we have route get, and /search / we need the token first, which is compulsory, and then we would need to pass the pagination, which is optional. Pagination, which is optional, and here we are going to say contact controller at the function which is search data. So let's just pass this here. Alright, so we have successfully written all our routes, and there's just a handful of corrections I want to make. Since we are passing the token before our pagination, we want to do ourselves some good by passing this here. And also in our search data, I also noticed one parameter which comes before the token, which is actually our search data itself. So we are going to pass the search first, right? Yes, we're going to pass the search first. The second will be the token, and then the last will be the pagination. So the search first, second token, and last is the pagination. And let's also do the same for all others where the pagination is actually the last. So here we have to go straight to request. Here the token comes first in get paginated data. Alright, get paginated data, the token comes first before we actually have the paginated data or the pagination. And any other one again? So which other one? I think that is all, just about that. So we save this, and I can just close this now. So everything looks good and everything looks fine. This video is really long, so I'm going to end the video here. I would have loved us to test our API, but as I said, this video is really long. So in the next video, we're going to test all these endpoints to be sure they are working before we can now jump into building our React, or building the client side, which is our react-redux application, which is going to consume this API. And one more thing before I end this video, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, and hit the notifications bell for more contents like this.